emerging businesses like Waymo or Isomorphic Labs, I think they're all getting better and growing based on this one technology underneath. So we can generate a return there. Just as an example, cloud alone in the last year, the backlog has doubled year on year to $240 billion. So that shows the potential for return on the other side. And so we are investing to meet that demand, and that's what makes this an exciting moment. So I think the investment makes sense given the progress in the technology we are seeing and the opportunities we see on top of it.
Demis, I have to ask you the third elephant in the room, which is, what on earth is AGI? Because, we keep hearing about it, and the more we hear about it, the more we feel like we're trying to build something that is going to control all of us, and then the question is, why are we building it? So what is it? Is it really the end goal to control? Is the end goal to augment prosperity? And help us understand your take on it. And also, how should India be thinking about AGI? Or if we need to prepare, what should we be doing?
Well, the first thing I'll say is the reason I've worked my whole career on AI is because I think it could be the ultimate tool for accelerating scientific discovery and areas like medicine. So things like AlphaFold, I hope, will be the first of many advances showcasing that. And then we can apply that to help us tackle many of the challenges facing society today, from disease to climate to inequality. So I think AI on the upside, the opportunity has an AGI, and the limit has that potential. In terms of defining what AGI is, I've always defined it, have a high bar for AGI, which is a system that exhibits all the cognitive capabilities that humans have. Now, the reason that's important is the human reference point is because the brain is the only evidence we have, the only existence proof we have that general intelligence is possible. So it's kind of, we won't really know we have a fully general system unless it's able to do a lot of things that we sometimes take for granted. Things like creativity and long-term planning and better use of memory. And so today's systems, they're impressive, but they're not there yet, in my opinion. And I think we've still got a way to go, at least another 5-10 years to go. But certainly in the next phase, the next decade or 2 decades, I see it as the sort of ultimate enhancement tool for us and human scientists, human experts, but also the youth of today. And this is what was exciting, seeing that in India here in this visit, is we'll have access to these incredible tools. So whatever that means, building businesses, creating art, I think they'll be sort of almost superpowered to do that with these access to these tools that you can access from anywhere, the most cutting-edge tools in the world from anywhere, including from India. So I think it's going to be a very exciting moment, but there are also risks too that we have to take into account. You mentioned jobs earlier, but there's also technical risks of making sure these systems stay within their guardrails and they serve our purposes and what we want as humanity. And then furthermore, the economic question of sharing the benefits that that's going to bring widely and equally to across the world. So these are all big challenges still to come. But the potential's there if we do it in the right way.
Just listening to what you said, something just struck me, which is we all talk about how AI in the world of AI, we are going to question the role of humans, and we don't know. But what you said sort of told me is that the role of humans is going to become even more important. Am I right in reading that?
I think for the next couple of decades, I think that's going to be the way. If you think about the AI systems today, they're kind of passive systems. They're impressive, but the human using it puts in the energy, puts in the question. Even in science, we have to supply the hypothesis and what the right research question is, and then these tools will help us get to those answers more quickly. So I think that's going to be the next phase of the AI development story.
James, I'll come back to you. Sundar talked about his vision of success is when the last person in the value chain is empowered. Now, in India, we have a very strong SME sector, the small, micro businesses. They're really the backbone of our economy, right? And they always are left behind when it comes to technology adoption. I'll ask you the same question. What should AI success look like, but with the SME lens? So what would your answer be?
I actually think this is one of the most exciting opportunities, because I think for the longest time, most SMEs in both developed, quite frankly, any economy, have always not had the kind of capabilities and powers that large companies have. And I think this is probably the first technology that fundamentally changes that. And you could argue the internet and mobile and all of that did some of that, but this does this even more. Think about the kinds of superpowers that this technology gives to an SME. Imagine an SME, it could be a trader, it could be a retailer, it could be a small manufacturer doing kind of handcrafts and so forth. But think about the ability to be able to harness technology without having to be a technologist. Think about the small proprietor who can actually describe the technological systems that they want their small business to use and almost vibe code or describe what they want, and these systems build that. So I think the possibility for these kind of superpower capabilities being available to small businesses, I think it's going to be extraordinarily exciting. And I think the potential for that, particularly for countries like India and countries in the global south, where the SME part of the economy is actually the biggest part of the economy and touches more people, more lives. Now, one of the things that, we're hoping we can contribute to this, and we're partnering right now with the Project Vani, for example, with the Indian Institute of Science, which is how do you make these technologies more available?
All right, viewers, that was Alphabet and Google CEO Sundar Pichai speaking in the panel at the India AI Summit. But let's move on to give you some more details that are coming in from the AI Summit. The India AI Impact 2026 Summit in New Delhi has been extended by an extra day until February 21 as overwhelming global interest and massive turnout pushed organizers to prolong access. Longer daily hours have also been announced to accommodate visitors, startups and industry leaders eager to explore the latest in artificial intelligence. Day 3 of the summit has been marked by statements from Demis, Hassabis, CEO of Google DeepMind, and Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw, who highlighted India's role in shaping the global future of artificial intelligence. Further engagements at the summit include Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting the President of Estonia, Alar Karis, at Hyderabad House to discuss strengthening bilateral ties. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Olzas Bektunov of Kazakhstan arrived in New Delhi and was welcomed by Union Minister Kirti Vardhan Singh. His participation at the summit is expected to boost technology and innovation partnerships between India and Kazakhstan. Prime Minister Modi also met the President of Serbia, Alexander Vučić, at Hyderabad House, reaffirming India's strategic and technology partnerships across Europe and Asia. Regardless of the challenges, the summit continues to showcase India as a global leader in artificial intelligence, with participation from world leaders, tech giants, startups, and policymakers. We will now cut across to French President Emmanuel Macron as he attends the India-French Cooperation Summit.
Here today, but all around the city, about how AI is a technology that basically we only get probably once a century. That changes everything, from the way we learn, from the way we get informed, from the way we cure disease. We're in one of the most prestigious hospitals here. It changes the way we interact. It changes the way we access information. And as such, it can only be dealt when we bring a lot of different stakeholders in one room. And that's what we're doing with the AI Summit we did in Paris and that India is doing now. when you're thinking about AI and you both work in AI, and I know you have this idea in mind on where you want to bring AI, and this is something we concretely share with our Indian friends. This is too much of an important technology to just be developed in the hands of a few companies. We need to think how we develop it with public good interest. And I know you both care about this topic very much. So maybe starting with Manan, based on your work, what would be your advice to this room, scientists here, but also people from the government, people from all around the world who are gathered in Delhi, so to make sure that we continue trying and pushing AI in the interest of public good, which was a key theme of our AI Paris Summit as well.
Sure. So, we can just talk endlessly about AI, but I'll focus more on, something which is relevant for this discourse. So we have to see that as AI matures, as it becomes more and more useful, it will be adopted more. It will be consumed more. And if it is being consumed more and we are really serious about its social good, then it has to become more sustainable. It has to become more energy efficient. It has to become more green. So that is something that, at least in our work, we try to closely focus on, because we work on things like next forms of computing, semiconductor devices which take less energy. So, neuromorphic computing, bio-inspired computing. The essence here is that we need to cut down the power budget or the energy budget that AI systems consume. And I think, at least in the Indo-French context, this has a lot of relevance because both countries have strong commitment to AI for the wider good and also for sustainability. And, with our French partners, we are working extensively on building low energy AI systems. The work is quite complementary, just how the cultures are complementary. They work more on new materials. We work more on building systems with those materials or algorithms with those materials, which are more energy efficient. So if you ask me to summarize, I would say that sustainable AI or getting the AI systems to be more green, more sustainable is what would make it enduring and what it would take to much larger scale of impact.
And what we can do together.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Priyanka, do you want to add up to that topic as well?
Yes, thank you for the question. And just to add to Manan, so AI for good, because AI, let's be honest, it's machine learning and among other forms of training data. And at the base, it's very, very technical. So it might actually scare people. So we need some mechanisms that, on one side, you're able to destigmatize this fear of technology and people not knowing what is behind. Even for us scientists, sometimes we're like, okay, what's behind this model? And so on the sustainability aspect, it's also, we are training large amounts of data, but is it better to focus on certain aspects? And that really depends on regulatory access to the different data sets that we have. For example, we work on flood early warning systems, and I'm heading international strategy for this company. And so when we are doing transboundary training, how do we get access to that data? Even if we cross-collaborate with research teams, so we require the help of policymakers to make sure that the access to that data is fluid, so that we have more parameters that can help us with our training.
Thank you. Manan, you're also a professor, and so one of the aspects I know you're thinking about a lot is the impact of AI on your students. Could you build a bit on that as well?
Yeah. So again, especially for academic pedagogy, it's like an inflection point with the LLMs, the GPTs, the agentic systems. It's like a never seen before situation, and many things are not clear. We don't want to jump both by the teachers and the students, for more efficiency, more productivity. At the same time, we need to protect the demographics. The session before spoke about the child protection. So we need to take care of the demographics. But there are n number of things, whether students can use agents in an examination, whether teachers can design a question paper with an agentic AI, or whether you can replace the classroom teacher with an avatar of a instructor. So there are many gray areas, but we need to ride this tide, and we need to really be able to tame. Both students and the teachers need to tame this technology for the wider good.
Thank you. you talked about sustainability, data access that led us to teaching, and you mentioned it, kids. In the session before with Minister Le Henaf, we had a great discussion.
And now moving on, viewers, the Kremlin has reportedly denied that Russia or China carried out any secret nuclear talks, noting that Beijing has also rejected recent US accusations. Earlier this month, the United States alleged that China conducted an underground nuclear test in June 2020. US officials say seismic data from a remote station in Kazakhstan recorded a small explosion at China's LOP North test site, which they claim matches the characteristics of a nuclear blast rather than mining activity or a natural earthquake. However, the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization says the data is too limited to confirm the cause of the events with certainty. Meanwhile, China has dismissed the allegation as entirely unfounded, describing it as a political attempt to justify renewed US nuclear testing. These claims by the US comes as President Donald Trump presses China to join the US and Russia in negotiating a replacement for the New START Treaty, which is the last strategic nuclear arms limitation pact between Washington and Moscow that reportedly expired on February 5 this year. Experts warn that the treaty's expiration could raise the risk of an accelerated global nuclear arms race, though others caution that these concerns may be overstated. Joining me now for this discussion is independent China strategist Andrew K.P. Leong. He joins us from Hong Kong. Mr. Leong, thanks very much for joining us. Firstly, how do you see the fact that it has taken US as many as 6 years to raise this alarm? Apparently, it alleges that the test was conducted in 2020. So why now in 2026 has it repeated that accusation?
Well, of course, the new nuclear arm testing ban between the United States and Russia is going to expire shortly. And of course, this raised alarm bells, not only between these two countries, but around the world. So this is fact number one. Fact number two, the current nuclear warheads nowadays are so destructive that they can destroy the whole world, let alone the two countries, the whole world, many times over, because they are multiple times more powerful than those dropped in Japan at the end of the Second World War. So I think that you look at the total number of warheads, nuclear warheads already stockpiled. Russia, according to some estimates, has 4,309 warheads. The latest warheads, don't forget, they are multiple times more powerful than those dropped in Nagasaki in Hiroshima. And the United States has 3,700, still a very substantial number. And China is about only 600. So China is now is multiple times the stockpile much lower. But as I said, these warheads are much more powerful, and it makes little sense of increasing the total number of stockpiles on the surface, because sometimes modern warfare, especially nuclear warfare, highlights the conundrum of the so-called first strike and second strike. The first strike is that a country tries to annihilate the stockpiles of his opponent. That's the first strike. But if there are sufficient warheads in different areas in the opponent, then the opponent can mount a counter-attack in the second strike. So this is theory. Although in this theory assumes that either the first strike or any kind of exchanges wouldn't destroy the world over, as I highlighted earlier. So in that context, while Russia has got 4,309 modern warheads, US 3,007, and China 600. Naturally, China wants to restore the balance, if only to maintain the credibility of a second strike. Now, this does not say it does not confirm that China in fact conducted a nuclear testing. Because as I said, this war is already very, very powerful, multiple times more powerful than those dropped in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So whether there is, China in fact conducted the testing remains to be seen, but the whole thing has got to be looked at in the context which I've just outlined.
All right, sure. Should one really be skeptical about the end of the START treaty, because there are fears and concerns rising of countries rushing or racing for a nuclear arsenal, building, but CTBTO of course continues to say there's not enough evidence to suggest that.
Well, the other question in this discussion is related to the spread of nuclear arms around the world, as countries find that the only insurance policy against being bullied is to develop a nuclear weapon, especially small countries which are subject to US coercion. Think North Korea. For example, the Kim Jong-un regime has been fed up with the so-called six-party talks, and Trump's initial threat of fire and fury, followed by a handshake across the border with him. But at the end, it resulted in nothing. The United States refused to even ease any kind of sanctions against North Korea unless North Korea surrender all its nuclear weapons totally. Well, that's, of course, is not the way that the North Korea thinks what should be a kind of a negotiation. And hence, the North Korea is now hell-bound to build up its nuclear armament capabilities together with long-range missile delivery systems. The fear is that if the nuclear testing is conducted by the US or Russia or even China, this could spur other countries to develop their nuclear weapons. And let's not forget that many countries are on the verge of reaching full capability of developing these weapons. And if that happens, this could stabilize a lot of the dynamics in the Asia Pacific, in Southeast Asia, and in the Middle East and around the world. And that's no good for any countries, not for China, not for the United States, not for the world. And that's the much more important question to consider in this discussion over nuclear testing.
All right, Mr. Leong, thanks very much then for joining us with your assessment in this discussion. And we now move on, viewers. Turkey's Parliamentary Peace Commission has finalized a draft report proposing a temporary legal framework for reforms tied to verified PKK disarmament. The reports call for redefining terrorism to exclude non-violent acts, strengthening free speech protections, and ending the practice of appointing government trustees over elected mayors in Kurdish majority regions. It also outlines the reintegration of former PKK members who lay down arms, while stressing there will be no blanket amnesty and that all cases must still go through judicial review. A standalone law would be introduced only after state authorities confirm full PKK disarmament. Critics warn that the process lacks enforcement powers and remains politically sensitive. Saul Satka is there with us in this discussion. He's a political commentator from Tel Aviv. Saul, Israel, of course, is raising alarms over this Turkey-Pakistan alleged nuclear access that it is saying, it is also saying could have the backing of Saudi Arabia. How critical is this, and what kind of threat does this really pose for the Middle East?
None at all, because the Pakistani nuclear program is very much under the watchful eye of the United States. If you recall, Pakistan is effectively a military dependency of the United States, and they couldn't absolutely do anything like that at all. This might be some kind of game on the part of Saudi Arabia and various other people to try and increase their leverage in various negotiations in relation to the Abraham Accords and the balance of power in the Middle East. That's all I can assume it is. But the Iranians are not going to be getting their nuclear bombs, and certainly the Saudis will not be either, not in any particular way, not via Pakistan. The Saudis do not have a functional expeditionary army that they could branch out. If they tried to do this, they would be coming right up against the people who supply all their weapons. If you recall, Saudi buys pretty much all the weapons that they have from the Americans. The Americans need to stay in their good books because otherwise they can't get the spare parts that you need to maintain all those very expensive and complex weapons, including the jets, which within 10 hours of flying time no longer function once your benefactor who provides them to you cuts you off. So all that is just this complete pie in the sky, and at the very most, it's a bluff to try and get something else out of some kind of negotiation. And to be honest, it's not even a good bluff because it's totally without any credibility.
But it is it likely that Ankara's ties with Islamabad could fuel or foster Turkey's nuclear, advances?
I didn't catch that, sorry.
Is it also likely that Ankara's growing ties with Islamabad could fuel Turkey's nuclear ambitions?
It's possible, but the Turks, again, the Turks are going to watch in the near future as the Iranians pay the price for their nuclear adventures. And they will find that the benefit for them having a nuke is very, very low, and the cost for them to have a nuke is very high. And so as long as the leaders in Ankara are relatively logical, reasonable people, which they are, according to people I know who tell me that they are, a lot of the messaging that comes out of there is bluster for their own local population. There's no prospect that they're going to try and build a nuke or buy a nuke from Pakistan. Certainly that won't be allowed to happen. There are too many actors in the region who will prevent it.
Right, so I'll continue to stay on with me, viewers. We're now going to proceed. Now, former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has warned that Turkey under President Tayyip Erdogan is emerging as a new strategic threat to Israel. Speaking at the 2026 Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations in Jerusalem, Bennett accused Ankara of trying to pull Saudi Arabia away from Israel and help form a hostile Sunni axis that he says includes nuclear-armed Pakistan. Bennett described Erdogan as a sophisticated and dangerous adversary seeking to surround Israel, linking Turkey, Qatar, and the Muslim Brotherhoods as part of a growing regional challenge. He said Israel must confront threats from both Tehran and Ankara. At the same time, Bennett also sharply criticized Israel's current leadership, saying it has divided the country and failed to prevent major disasters, and has signaled his intention to lead Israel into what he called its next chapter. Saul, you were just saying there is no reason for alarm whatsoever, but the former leader of Israel has issued that statement saying it's a huge cause of concern, while also, of course, condemning the leadership of Israel.
Right, well, of course, he certainly is the chief opposition figure, so it's natural that within a democracy, the chief opposition figure will speak critically of the government. That's how democracies work. So that's not at all surprising. I certainly don't agree with him on the issue of Turkey being a long-term strategic threat. The Turks are going to be very tied down, let's say, over the next 50 years, because they have a minority population of Kurds who have allies on all their borders. And those Kurds are demanding gradually and increasingly independence. Those Kurds have a history of ethnic violence. They have been the subject of extensive killings and persecutions by the Turkish majority. And over the next 50 years, that Turkish majority is going to be gradually shrinking up until a point where towards the end of this century, there will no longer be a Turkish majority within the current borders of Turkey. And that is going to be the battle royale that the Turks are going to be facing, they certainly won't be having the energy or the ability even to start major wars with Israel, who has a vast strategic edge on them in terms of the technology in their weapons. And any attempt by the Turks, for example, to try and invade Israel would absolutely fall flat. And at the same time, Israel is not going to allow the game that the Iranians played, which was to build up proxy armies all around Israel's borders, to be done by anyone ever again. As in, anyone that tries to build up a proxy army on Israel's borders is going to find that proxy army quickly barred. And if that wants to be Turkey, if Turkey wants to try and play that game, they will find out how that works out for that proxy army.
Russia is also spending and working with Turkey, of course, on its nuclear plant. But talking about its arsenal, how close do we know, how close is Turkey really to its first bomb?
As far as I know, Turkey is not anywhere near close to its first bomb.
All right.
And as for the situation with Russia that was discussed before, the Russian empire, such as it is, we're going to see that gradually fall apart over the next decade, because they have simply burnt through their stockpile of military equipment that they took 50 or 60 years to build in their folly in Ukraine. And within the next couple of years, there really will be nothing left of it. They have run their economy into a terrible state of catastrophe and war dependence, and their population eventually it will suffer too much to allow this to continue. They have lost more than 1 million men on the battlefields to death, and hundreds of thousands or more to injuries that will stand with them for the rest of their lives and will require the maintenance of the Russian state, while the Russian population is shrinking because they're not having any kids anymore. And all their best and brightest have left because of the war, because they want to avoid conscription and almost certain death in a frozen field in Ukraine. So Russia is in very deep trouble. And if as Iran found out when Iran was attacked in June by Israel and then the United States, their ally, Russia, was not able to do anything to help them. They weren't even able to help them diplomatically, really. They didn't even bother saying anything. We saw the same in Caracas. A Russian ally, the leader of a Russian ally, was picked up by US special forces and taken to jail in New York. And what were the Russians able to do? Nothing. They couldn't even get their own oil out of Venezuela. The United States came and interdicted their oil shipments. The Russians are currently far too busy to be helping anyone. They can't help Caracas, and they can't help Tehran, and they certainly won't be able to help Ankara if Ankara decides to go in the Russian direction and effectively leave NATO.
All right. Saul, thanks very much then for joining us here with your assessment of the situation. Viewers, with that, we'll wrap up this edition of the World Report on NewsX World. Keep watching for all international news and updates.